You're listening to the End Zone Scoop, where three girls, two Brits and one American, discuss the beautiful game of American football. So join me, Liz Bhandari, NFLGirlUK, and my co-host Dayna O'Gorman from Our Turf Football and Shona Duthie from 99 Yards. Enjoy the show! Welcome back, everyone. Week 2 of the NFL season is in the books. So much craziness, and we'll get into that shortly. But before we do, ladies, how good does it feel to be 2-0?
Well, according to my Monday morning, we were 1-1 because my dream was so convincing. But I was very surprised to wake up, well, eventually after my drive home, to see we actually were 2-0. Yeah, so very excited. And I was so excited for Hill and LG Collier to get that stop at the end of the game. That was pretty impressive.
It was, we are, all the three of us are Seahawks fans. Those are our primary teams, but I have to give props to the entire NFC West. It is crazy that 3 out of the 4 teams are 2-0 with decisive wins, like not even, barely scraping by ones. Well, you could question that first Cardinals game, but they were playing the 49ers, for God's sake. And and even the 49ers, we're going to talk about injuries in a minute, being completely depleted, they still managed to kill the Jets, which we are also going to talk about today. So I think it's really impressive, the entire NFC West, and they're not alone. There's lots of divisions that have good teams that are starting out 2-0, but it is, I read a tweet earlier before the game started on Sunday that said, why does it already feel like week 5 or 6? Like, I feel like every week there's been so much that's going on, but really it is just the second week, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, guys, yep, Dana's right. So we're going to be discussing injuries across the league, whether we think Adam Gase should be fired, and we're going to continue with part 2 of our predictions for the division winners, completed with the NFC. So let's get right to it.
I think that all three of us agreed that the biggest story this weekend was the ridiculous number of injuries. And not just injuries in general, but ACL and other season-ending injuries. I saw tweet after tweet by major media, all the national level guys that said they had not seen anything like this ever that they could remember. And so it was just so ridiculously devastating to so many teams. So I wrote an article, it was just out today over on Our Turf, but that kind of recapped a lot of them. But I think that the most overwhelming number of injuries had to be for the San Francisco 49ers. It was gut-wrenching, especially if you were a fan, to watch player after player be carted off the field. They had 5 players that got injured, more with smaller injuries, but the 5 major players that they got. So there was Solomon Thomas and Nick Bosa, 2 of their huge pass rushers, both go out with ACLs, done for the season. Then Jimmy Garoppolo, their starting quarterback, was out with a high ankle sprain. They expect him to be out 3 to 6 weeks. Tevin Coleman went out with a knee. It just was amazing to watch all of them start to fall within the same game. After the game, Kyle Shanahan, their head coach, laid a lot of the blame on the turf at MetLife Stadium, which was interesting. He kept saying that it was sticky. The NFL went out, they checked it out, and they said, no, it's fine. It meets all the protocols. And the reason why he was worried is because they have to play again next week on that same turf when they play the Jets. The NFC West is playing the Giants and the Jets both this season. Seattle does it later in the year too, and they stay on the East Coast. So they have to go back and forth. But that was his concern. Is he going to lose more of his players that way? Other major injuries, I think that probably the saddest was Saquon Barkley for the running back for the New York Giants. And not that the other ones aren't as important, but Barkley is the star in New York. There is no other star. No offense to all the players. No offense, Golden Tate. No offense, Daniel Jones. But Saquon Barkley is the face of that franchise, and he is out for the year with an ACL. From my just kind of very quick count, I think there were 9 ACL injuries on Sunday.
It's just crazy.
Which is overwhelming,
Nuts.
right? 2 in San Francisco, 2 in Seattle. You have 1 in New York. You have 1. It went on and on and on. There's a couple that are still listed as knees, so I don't know that we've heard yet whether or not those are ACLs. And then a couple of MCLs, lots of groins and torn pectorals. That Minnesota Vikings lost Anthony Barr. The list was crazy, and these weren't fill-in players. These weren't, just, players that didn't know these were the stars and the heart of the team. So my question for you guys is, we expected to lose players this year. We thought it would be due to COVID, right? Like we all thought, oh, he's going to get COVID. He's going to be out for 3 weeks. Oh, someone will get COVID. Yeah. We haven't seen that. The NFL has controlled that beautifully as far as we know. But this week completely changed the trajectory, because it wasn't just out for 3 weeks with COVID. It is out for this season. Do you guys, I think personally, obviously San Francisco was hit probably the worst, although you could look at Denver. They had lost Von Miller earlier in the year. Then they lost their quarterback, Drew Lock, to shoulder. Now, he's not out for the season. Hopefully he will be back. They lost Cortland Sutton for the season. They had so many injuries, and I was really kind of big on the Broncos this year. So it really changed the trajectory. So if you guys would look at this, is this week the worst week that you've seen for injuries? And which team do you think will be affected the most by their injuries?
I think this has been one of the worst I've ever seen in the NFL. Like you say, this normally happens later on, like week 5 and 6, when they've been playing a few games and it's a constant turnaround. I don't know if it's maybe because we haven't had a preseason, so they haven't had that warm-up games where they can get used to being in the team, get used to the new system that they're working in. It's just so shocking. I cannot believe how many players have gone out. For me, the 49ers have lost the biggest players. Like Bosa won the Defensive Rookie Player of the Year last year. He's out for the season. That's a big loss to them. I'm not quite sure if Jimmy G being out is going to be a big loss to the 49ers.
Depends on the day.
my verdict's still out on him a little bit, but they still have George Kittle's out, Deebo Samuel, Raheem Mostert's latest test revealed an MCL sprain as well.
Yep. Tevin Coleman. Their list was ridiculous before season 1. And it just got worse every single time.
I mean, obviously the Broncos, like I mentioned last week, that Von Miller being out was massive for them, not only on the field, but he's a massive presence off the field. He has that big leadership for that team. And people would have to step up with him being gone. And I said, people might look to Drew Lock, and now he's gone out with a shoulder injury. So yeah, you're right. I think them two have suffered the biggest losses this week. And obviously Barkley for the Giants, he is their star. He is their like little ray of hope for Giants fans. And now he's gone for the whole season.
Yeah. I think that's what's been quite tough. And I agree, definitely. I think 49ers are the team that I think have now suffered the most. Like I really thought, if anything, they were going to be, I don't know about Super Bowl contenders, but certainly, I thought they were going to win our division. But now I don't think that will happen unless some kind of miracle. But it's a shame because they're a really good team. And just big injuries that will affect everything. And it does make me wonder, is it because there was no preseason? Like, can you blame it for that or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll said that he was having their guys, whatever that means, look into that. Like, was it no preseason games, or was it the shortened off season? You have to remember, they couldn't come in for rookie camp. They couldn't come in for, training. They were held out of the facilities for so long. So were they not able to build up that strength and conditioning that those coaches work on so much? I don't know that they'll know. I just think that the feeling that I got was such shock, like from all the analysts and the media and the guys, calling the games. They were just like, another one goes down. I had someone tell me too that they went, because when I just released my article on Shell and Go, they're like, Dayna, Christian McCaffrey being out with a high ankle sprain for 6 weeks is a much bigger deal. For fantasy, I said, I don't care about fantasy football. And it's not to be rude to fantasy. I know that's a big, huge deal for some people, but these are these teams. These are their lives, not your work fantasy football league. Although the loss of Christian McCaffrey is huge, I think that it actually might give Teddy Bridgewater a little more chance to develop with the rest of that team because, they lean on Christian McCaffrey so hard. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I think that next week, it will be interesting to see how teams cope. I mean, we being Seahawks fans, we already have, watching them scramble at this point. They have lost Marquise Blair and Bruce Irvin to ACLs for the season, and they didn't have a lot of depth in those positions as it was. And so they're not alone. Now this is a league-wide, situation. I don't know that there was a single team that wasn't touched this last week. So we'll see. Week 3 could be real interesting.
Yeah, apparently we're now shopping for pass rushers, but apparently the pool is rather sparse.
Yeah, so go get Michael Bennett. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes!
Go get Michael Bennett. Go get Michael Bennett. Come on.
Get him back.
Go get Michael Bennett. Well, one team that did get a couple of injuries were the New York Jets, but I'm not so sure that's their biggest problem, is it, Shona?
Oh dear. What can I not say about Adam Gase? That's the problem. I think I have too much in my vocabulary that is not good for a podcast. Basically, they are the worst team in football right now. And I don't think it is all down to the players. They obviously didn't draft enough. They didn't build around Sam Darnold like they should have with free agency and with their draft picks, even though they had quite good draft capital. They've been embarrassed twice this season now, first by the Buffalo Bills and by the San Francisco 49ers, who were basically, their backups were still better than the Jet starters. So that is what we're looking at here. Adam Gase comes out after the game and says, this shit is no fun, going out there and getting your ass beat. Well, that's down to you as a head coach. Like, I'm still so shocked that he even got the job in the first place. He didn't do a good job in Miami. And then all of a sudden the Jets are hiring him. That perplexed me way more than anything else, the decision that I've gone on since. Obviously, he's now basically odds on to be one of the first coaches sacked, with Dan Quinn not far behind, which I think Adam Gase is far worse than Dan Quinn. And also the most bizarre thing as well was he doesn't let Sam Darnold call his own, he's not audible. So basically on the 4th and 1 that they went for, when he passed to the running back Josh Adams, when Sam Darnold had the space, he wasn't able to call that on his own because apparently Gase does all the calls. And it's as simple as that. Gase makes the call and the teams run the play that Gase calls every day. So this is their problem. They're not going to get anywhere. I honestly cannot actually see them winning a game this season. People keep saying they're tanking for Trevor Lawrence. It's honestly, I don't really know what else to say. Like, you're not tanking. You're basically sunk. Your anchor is off. It's beached. Your ship is gone. Your head coach has lost the plot. And I don't really know what else to say. Yeah. I just have I feel so sorry for Sam Darnold. He had so much promise in the draft last season, and they haven't built around him. And now he's basically hearing that they're, loads of fans saying they're tanking for the new quarterback next season. But if Gase is still there, the problem's still going to be there. That guy just is not a head coach.
I am baffled by Adam Gase's hire in New York. I was baffled that they did it so quickly. Like, they were this isn't Ron Rivera, people. It's not like he had these championship teams and Washington Football Club snatched him up immediately. No, this is the Jets, who have a history of being crap. And then they've got another crap coach. He is terrible. And he's kind of a weird dude too. Like, we've seen his interviews, like he's an odd little duck, but at the same time, he also has no success to stand on. I'm not really sure why he was such a quote unquote hot commodity but only for the Jets. I don't know. Maybe I don't think they're tanking either. I don't think that's it. Usually when you see last year in Miami, the whole tanking conversation made sense. You had a brand new coach who had a lot of talent, who was dumping all of their players that they had before and was trying to rebuild his own team. You don't see this in New York. The only thing you see in New York right now is terrible, terrible football and a head coach that will take absolutely no responsibility for it.
No.
He is the end all be all there, and he will take no responsibility for it. You know, I was reading an article that said they thought Matt Patricia from the Detroit Lions might get fired before Adam Gase, and it made me laugh because at least the Lions, yes, they're not doing very well, but at least they're somewhat competitive. You can see what they're trying to do. You can actually see a game plan on the field. You cannot see a game plan on the field with the Jets. I don't get it. And why they keep pretending that he's a good coach is beyond me. They need to get rid of him after week 3, put in an interim, spend a lot of time doing some research for the rest of the season, and find a coach that will actually be able to develop Darnold, who actually is a pretty good little quarterback.
You know what? I actually think I could go in there and do a better job than Adam Gase.
Let's go.
And I know nothing about like secondaries or, you know, I get excited about the defense when they make good plays, and I know enough. I honestly genuinely think I could stand there and just do one game and prove that I'm better than Adam Gase as a head coach.
Let's go. Between the three of us, we got it. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah, let's just do it, you know. End zone scoop coaching Jets. Get Adam Gase out there.
Let's do it.
It's weird though, isn't it? Because like he got signed to obviously a 4-year deal, and I think that's probably one of the reasons maybe why they haven't fired him yet. Because I guess they basically paying 2 coaches. He's on like a $20 million deal over 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Ridiculous for a terrible coach.
Yeah. So, but didn't he join them or get the job because of some really? A really good recommendation from Peyton Manning? Is that not the reason why he got the job in the first place?
Well, I mean, he did have a good relationship with Peyton Manning. Like, everyone knows this, but Peyton Manning made the calls. Like, you know, back then when when Gase was his offensive coordinator, Peyton Manning wasn't like, yeah, let Adam Gase do all my calls. No way. Sam Darnold's like a young guy, so he's like, okay, my head coach is telling me he's doing all these calls, I'm going to listen. Peyton Manning wouldn't even... No, Peyton Manning wouldn't even do that in the month of Sundays. You'd have to like pay him like $20 million to do so.
Yeah.
He still calls him a brilliant offensive mind, though.
Well, but Peyton has lost his mind, so you know we're gonna let that go. We're gonna say thank you for your service, Peyton, and we're gonna move on because he doesn't know how to pick a coach apparently. So we're gonna let that be. Poor Peyton.
But yeah, there was also a bizarre Adam Gase comment after the game, being like, oh, we stopped moving the ball, that's why we didn't score a touchdown. And I'm like, oh my god, this guy, like it's just not normal.
It's time. We need to make a call. We're calling that Adam Gase needs to go. So
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's time.
Yeah. I have no faith in that guy whatsoever. He made Ryan Tannehill look really bad, and he's doing the same to Sam. And, you know, Ryan's actually done really well after leaving Miami and leaving Adam Gase behind as a head coach. So maybe just leave the possessed man behind, Jets, and get somebody decent in.
Well, last week we discussed the AFC in terms of who we thought would win those divisions. And now it's time to discuss NFC, even though last week I totally got things mixed up. Anyhow,
the Cowboys are in the
this
division.
time.
yeah.
The Cowboys going to win the AFC.
I was like,
Was it AFC East or something? AFC
Yeah.
South, I think it's
like Jerry Jones just thought,
It was
never going to
nailed
win.
it.
I'm never going to win the NFC. I'm just going to switch over to AFC.
Yep, gonna nail it.
That's not a bad idea, Jerry. Maybe you should do it.
He'll just give the rest of the team some Dom Perignon and his yacht, and, you know, they'll be fine.
Happy days. Now, funny enough, I think if we'd have discussed this last week, I probably would have had probably very different answers to kind of where we are today, really. So I think let's go around and see who we each think is going to win each division. So I'm going to start off with the NFC North. For me, I think if any team's going to do it, I think it's going to be the Green Bay Packers. I think they have the strongest team in the North. Well, yeah, in the NFC North. So How about you guys? Who do you think's going to win that?
Yeah, I think that right now, after a couple of games, I don't know that I would have said this before the first 2 weeks of the season. I think I would have put the Vikings up because I was impressed, but the Vikings look a little lost right now. And I don't know if it's just because they lost, their safety blanket and Stephon Diggs, or if, they're just having some settling in issues, or again, no preseason. So maybe they're trying to still kind of get into the groove of things. But I think I would have put the Vikings above them. I'm not counting the Vikings out still. I still think that they have a lot of talent. But Aaron Rodgers has looked like a man possessed. So I'm not sure if he's like, that's what you get for, drafting a quarterback. Now I'm going to make you look like a moron. But, so he's out there, doing well. Devontae Adams, although he was injured, he had a hamstring this last weekend. And so that could be a huge change for them. But, Jones has looked great for them. And I think that they look like, of all of them, the more complete team. I think the Bears, depending on what Trubisky does, I think that they have some weird shot of having a better season than they did last year. I think that they probably will. But I think really, if you had to pick between the four, it's going to be the Vikings or the Packers, and the Packers just look like a better team right now.
I agree with you, Dana. I actually didn't have the Packers winning before the start of the season. I thought it would be Vikings that take that title. I think the Vikings, though, have a lot of rookies, and they're banking on a lot of rookies doing well. So I think like I said before, it may take a little bit longer for them to gel together. But yeah, I think they're going to be there or thereabouts. And I don't think it'll be like a steamroll for the Packers to win that division.
The NFC East, yeah, you can probably guess who I'm going to go with. So my thought still is Dallas Cowboys for that area, but I don't know what you guys are thinking.
This division is always a weird one for me. I always feel like nobody wants to take that title at all. It's like it's like they go, oh wait, we could win it. Oh wait, no way, we've just lost to like the Jets, which no, that won't happen. But I don't know is my answer, because I would have said the Cowboys, and I would have said the Eagles would have been close to them. After a couple of games, I have no idea who's going to take that division. It'll be between the Eagles and the Cowboys. I think Washington has done really well. Obviously, they won their first game of the season. They did lose last week to the Cardinals, but they are moving in the right direction. Obviously, with Ron Rivera as their coach. But yeah, I just don't know with that. I think it will be the Cowboys. But it could be the Eagles. You just never know.
Right. What always ends up throwing me off, this division, much like a couple in the AFC, it's like you think you know who the powerhouse should be, but they just don't bother to play or show up. Like they're like, meh, not this year. What? And that seems to be the Eagles so far this year. They are 0-2. Philadelphia, on paper, should be a good team. The Cowboys should be a good team too. And I always say you never really know who a team is until week 4, just because I think everything's still kind of gelling. But the Cowboys come from behind last week would be super impressive if it wasn't against the Falcons, because the Falcons have a tendency to do that, which is heartbreaking to me because that team should also be really good. So I don't know. I think the Giants, especially without Saquon Barkley, they're done. That's not it for them this year. Washington could be a surprise. They could be a spoiler a little bit. I think that they could come in, not necessarily and win the division, but take the division away from someone because they beat them. And so then it's going to come down to the Eagles or the Cowboys. If I had to pick, if you force me, I would pick the Cowboys just because I think they have a little more talent there. But it will not surprise me at all if Philadelphia figures this out and they start to roll.
No, yeah. I think Chase Young on that Washington defense is absolutely incredible. So I think he could steal a victory himself, basically from one of those teams. Absolutely.
In NFC South, so for me, it's really between Saints and Tampa Bay, but don't know, and I know you guys hate this word, but I feel like it's gonna be Tampa. So I'm gonna go with Tampa Bay for the South. I know that makes you want to be actually sick.
I have to pay you to not say that word. I will send you.
I'll take money.
Like,
what are you gonna offer?
That word. You know what would be more exciting to
me
than saying that word? It would be either spewing up in my mouth a little bit and then swallowing it, or sticking my fingers into my eyeballs, pushing it up to my brain and swirling it around.
Ew.
Rather than saying that word.
Here's the thing. I would have said the Saints all the way until last night's game. They, for the first time ever in his entire career, Drew Brees looked old last night. He looked tired. His arm looked tired. And I don't know why that was for that particular game, because I thought they looked great against Tampa Bay. But I just think that losing Michael Thomas to injury, again, gosh, so many injuries, that could be a big factor for this team. I think that probably the Saints will still end up winning this division. I think that the experience level there, how long they've been playing together, I think that they'll come together. I don't think the Buccaneers, I will say this, God love Mike Evans. So it was so great. After they won their second game, God forbid Tom Brady go 0-2, because he'd never done it in his entire career. Yes, we heard all about it. But Mike Evans came out after that game and said, our offense was not good enough. You know, their defense saved them in that game and they needed to get it together. And I was like, oh, nobody talks about Tom Brady like that. And it might be good for Tom Brady. You're having that little bit of criticism from his own teammates, because he's been a god for so long, might fire him up. So that could have been a very smart move on Mike Evans's part. But I still think that I hate to say experience, because Tampa Bay has experience too, but the experience of that team being together in New Orleans will pull them out on top. And I think the Panthers will do just fine. I think that they're just going to settle into this year with Teddy Bridgewater, and they're just going to kind of see what happens with very little expectation and be kind of happy with what they get. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, for me, I still think the Saints will win it. Obviously, yeah, last night was a bit of a shocker, but people are now whispering for Winston to get a game, which I wouldn't be against. I'd like to see him get a go. But yeah, I'm not convinced by Tampa Bay's offense yet. I think it's a lot of big names, and it's like that usual thing of a lot of big names together, and it should work on paper, but it hasn't quite clicked yet. So
hello,
for me,
Cleveland. Yep.
So for me, I think it will still be the Saints, just because they've worked together a little bit longer. I still think they've got the overall talent there, and I think I think it'll be close, but I think they'll still stick out the division.
And then finally, the NFC West. So, factually the best division, and not because we're biased. Yeah, genuinely, I would have chosen 49ers, being the ones who would have, I think, won the division. Obviously, would have always wanted Seahawks to win. But I think with their injuries, and just with how the Seahawks are at the moment, I just don't see it being anyone else but the Seahawks.
I don't know who's going to win this division, because I'm so shocked that 3 teams are on 2-0. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect the Rams to have such a good start. I'm going to eat my own hat about Cliff Kingsbury, because he's done a great job with the Cardinals. When they're now 2-0, and Kyler Murray just looks like a complete baller. And obviously he's got a good connection with DeAndre Hopkins and I'll be in there. I genuinely don't know who could win that division. I thought it would be the 49ers, and I thought it would be between the 49ers and the Seahawks. But with them going down with such big injuries last week, I'm genuinely stumped as to who could see out. I don't want to jinx it. I think it could be Seattle, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was somebody else.
Yeah.
I want to okay, this is going to sound like me being a homer, and it's not, because we get these games later in the year. But we have to remember who the Rams and the Cardinals have played. The Cardinals played, the first week they played the 49ers and squeaked out that win, 24-20, on a Niners team, which we now know is not fit, and they're not, solid. Okay. and Jimmy G looked like the Jimmy G that many of us thought he was, not the, supermodel superstar that, many people were hoping he would turn out to be. And then they played Washington last night, which that team has been gutted. No one expected anything of it. So they blew them out. Good for them. They should have. They were the better team. Then you have to look at the Rams. They played the Cowboys the first week, where the Cowboys looked like they didn't know each other's names, let alone how to run a route. And then they played the Eagles, which have struggled horridly, right? And the Cowboys, they beat by 3 points. Now the Rams, or the Eagles, they beat them 37-19. That was a beat down. They look good. Both of those teams are one superstar injury away from disaster, because if the Cardinals lose DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, I love Larry Fitzgerald. He's one of my favorite players, but we all know that Larry Fitzgerald can't be the guy for them. And then you look at the Rams. If it's not for Aaron Donald, who literally, I don't know if you guys go back and watch his highlights, he picks people up, tosses them like trash, and keeps running around. I love Aaron Donald so much. He's literally, because I love defense, so I love watching him play. They lose either one of them or one other supporting character, they're going to be in as much trouble. The same goes for Seattle. San Francisco's already there. Seattle is much the same way. God forbid anything happened to Russell Wilson. But Seattle has lost 2 of their defensive linemen to ACLs. There's not a lot of depth there. So the NFC West, as often as it does, is going to come down who has the least number of injuries by the end of the season. Because that is how good this division is. That is how strong this division is. It is, without question, and anyone can try and argue this with me, the best division in football. There's a very good chance they will have 3 teams, if not 4. 4 is a possibility in the playoffs. Now, with San Francisco's injuries, I don't know that that'll happen. But they could easily have 3 teams in the playoffs. They are dominant. And so whoever gets less beat up come games 14, 15, 16 toward the end of that year, then that is who's going to end up winning. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But with the way Russell Wilson is playing this year and the way that the Seattle offense is playing, it is going to be hard for an Arizona defense, probably not so much Aaron Donald, but an Arizona defense to keep up. So if I had to pick a team, I'm going to pick Seattle just because of Russell Wilson and the way he's playing, but it's going to come down to inches with this one.
Yeah, his connection with DK Metcalf is insane right now. He was just like, he literally, there's a great gif or picture circulating on Twitter, if you haven't seen it, of DK Metcalf has Gilmore on his shoulders because he's now a family man, because basically he carried him the whole game. I love that. Love them two together. It's so good.
And that, honest to God, that is the best secondary in football right now, and is the Patriots secondary, has been for a couple of years, and they shredded them. And so that has to make the other NFC West teams play.
All right, ladies, before we end the show, we've got a question in from one of our listeners, Chris Jensen. And Dayna, I think you're going to like this one. Chris asks, Tyrod or Herbert for the Chargers? Are you with Anthony Lynn for his old mate Tyrod's experience, or the exciting young gun like 99% of the fan base?
I don't agree that 99% of the fan base wants Herbert to be put in. I loved watching that game. And the reason why is because you could tell it was a little shock and awe from the Chiefs, because Tyrod Taylor, as we all know, also on the injury list, he started having chest pains during warm-up. They rushed him straight to a hospital. He's been released, but they're monitoring week to week. So Herbert, literally, they walked to the kid and said, hey, you're up. You got 10 minutes. What? 2 completely different quarterbacks. With Tyrod Taylor, you have to be ready for the run. You have to be ready for what the Chiefs see in practice all the time, which is what they get out of Patrick Mahomes. But with Herbert, he's more of a traditional pocket passer kid. I mean, that's what he does. Plus, the kid was so hyper. It was so funny to watch. He was like a kid on Christmas morning. And so he had a lot of energy, made a lot of rookie mistakes. God love him. He was trying, and he did a great job. But the Chiefs just were not prepared. They did not look like they were ready for that game at all, even though they managed to win it by this much, and it took them to overtime, which it should have never taken them that long. Here's the thing with Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor has been screwed left and right in his entire career. Every time he gets a starting job, it's with where the rest of the team has huge holes in it, and Tyrod gets blamed, or he gets put on the bench and then they draft some new kid that the fan base starts to scream for, so he only gets 4 games. You know, I think about when he was in Cleveland, I get a little mad about this because I really like Tyrod Taylor, is when he was in Cleveland, those fans wanted Baker Mayfield so bad. They were so hell-bent on getting Baker Mayfield in there. Did it do him any good? No. Look at the rest of those seasons. And this, I mean, he was not the guy because the quarterback position wasn't the problem. But Tyrod then moved over. So then he gets to go to San Diego, LA, to go to the Chargers. And now they have this kid. He gets hurt. And I mean, it's the whole Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady situation all over again, where the fans want the new kid. I admire Anthony Lynn for saying, no, Tyrod is our starter. Herbert has a lot to learn, and he does. And therefore, if Tyrod can play, he's going to play. Doesn't mean that Herbert's not going to get his chance here eventually, but sometimes sitting on the bench for a year behind a quarterback who knows what they're doing makes a huge difference. And if you need a current example of that, Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith. He said he learned more in that year than he ever had in college, and that could be the same situation for Herbert.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I agree.
Sorry, I get a little worked up about Tyrod because I really like him. I really like him.
Liz has got Dak. You've got Tyrod. I'll have to find my own one.
We all have our own QBs, guys.
And I don't like very many of them. So.
Maybe mine's Sam Darnold. I have a wee soft spot for him. I feel so sorry for him. I really do. I just want to basically hatch a emergency plan to get him and Bradley McDougald out of the Jets ASAP, the Great Escape, and take them back to Seattle or something.
And Fant's there too, right? So we can bring them all back.
Yeah, big tunnel.
Yeah, just cuddle them up.
Well, that's all for this week's episode of the End Zone Scoop. Thanks for tuning in, and if you haven't already, please rate, review, subscribe, and hey, tell a friend about us too. Until next time, thanks for listening.